Welcome to the MarTech Matrix, a Blurbs production. Blurbs is the discovery platform where marketers and e-commerce leaders find the right technology faster. You get clear answers, real comparisons, and no sales fluff. Find your next partner at trustblurbs.com. This podcast brings that same mission to life. Each week, we connect MarTech founders and leaders with a co-host from the buy side, so you get both sides of the conversation. We'll explore what's working, what's hype, and what's next in marketing technology, all in about 30 minutes. And now, your host, Sean Simon.
Welcome to this episode of the MarTech Matrix. Big thanks to our sponsor at Blurbs. Blurbs is a community-driven platform designed to help connect buyers and sellers in a way that builds trust and confidence without the BS. You can find everything you need to know at trustblurbs.com. In today's episode, we will be discussing how marketers have been flying blind for years and how they can gain their vision back. Today's guest is helping them see clearly and act confidently with modern media measurement. Zeke, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sean.
Zeke, where are you calling in from today?
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, whereabouts?
Southwest Portland.
Southwest Portland. All right. We love Portland. All right. So before we dive into the questions, I'm going to read your blurb as it appears on Blurbs. Data Speaks centralizes all of a brand's data from various platforms into one dashboard. This enables companies to track their performance with a consistent source of truth, use AI-powered recommendations for decision-making, and run predictive models. The platform supports first-party tracking, ensuring privacy compliance and accurate customer insights. Does that summarize what Data Speaks does pretty good?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Love it. So, Zeke, tell us what your background is. Like, was there a personal frustration that led you to starting this company?
Yeah, so I'm a serial entrepreneur, had a couple of startups, and I had a marketing agency that I sold in 2015, started doing consulting, and I realized working with over 150 clients that the number one frustration was marketers had no idea what was actually driving their sales. So with my background in economics, statistics, machine learning, I started building solutions for my own clients and realized that the need was beyond that and decided to productize that into what today is Data Speaks.
I love that. It's so often I talk to founders and their background isn't even in marketing, but yet they're utilizing education that they've learned in other fields to make marketing better. So I love that. I know in the past you've said pixels can't accurately measure marketing impact and that there's a better way to do it. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So when you think about pixels, you have a couple of issues. The first is that 40% of all sales online happen outside your website. So Amazon, Walmart, so on. 17% of all ad spend goes to audio and TV that is not trackable by pixels. And when it's an actual website sale, 42% of those conversions are being blocked by most devices. So if you have an iPhone, ad blocker, Firefox, those are not going to be tracked. 38% of conversions are outside the arbitrary attribution windows, which is usually 7 days. So if somebody found you 8 days ago, they're not going to track that. But they also have the opposite problem where because they don't really see each other, they claim the same sales, so leading to duplication, and 39% of conversions actually are not incremental, meaning that they would have happened anyway.
Yeah. So are those the primary reasons that the current attribution models fall short, or are there other reasons why, especially in today's privacy first world, right? Like, and obviously you mentioned multi-channel, like, are there other reasons why attribution is falling short?
Well, that's if you're talking about the pixels, yeah, they have inherent limitations, and they're also being blocked left and right. They don't talk to each other, so that's the main issue that you find in terms of the actual pixels. If you are looking at constructing attribution based on those pixels, or if you use a last click, in Google Analytics, for example, it's going to show you what the last session was, but it's going to ignore what got you the customer in the first place.
Yeah. So at Data Speaks, are you primarily focused on MMM, or are you focused on other forms of measurement like incrementality?
Yeah. So the framework we advocate for is the same one that Google, Meta, TikTok, and all these ad platforms are recommending. They're recognizing the limitations of their own pixels. They're saying that's just not enough. And it's based on 3 pillars: media mix model, incrementality testing, and multi-touch attribution. So MTA is the only one that is at the user level. So I'm following with first-party tracking, I'm following you, Sean, across multiple channels, multiple devices, and unifying that into a cohesive customer journey. Then I have media mix modeling that essentially helps me understand the actual impact of different channels, their return on investment drop as you scale channels. And it's the best tool for budget allocation. And finally, you have incrementality experiments that by using geolocation, you can hold out certain channels in certain states, for example, or double your budget and see all other things being equal, the isolated effect of that particular intervention.
Got it. So I know MMM was, it was in favor many, many years ago, and it's making a comeback. What misconceptions do you find marketers still have with MMM?
Well, back in the day, when it was used for tracking more traditional channels as TV and print and radio and so on, one is you didn't have real-time data, and so you just had to wait 6 months and optimize based on what was true 6 months ago. Now marketers need to optimize in real time, so models need to run at least on a weekly basis, and that's what's going to give you the ability to respond very quickly to the shifts in the performance of your own channels.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think when MMM was first in vogue, it was it was pre-digital, right? So we're talking about static channels that just took longer to prove out. So that makes total sense. You mentioned MTA, and then oftentimes we find that brands that are relying on MTA often rely on last click as well. What's the problem with relying on last click, especially as it pertains to what you said earlier about multiple vendors or publishers taking credit for a conversion? Doesn't last click solve for that?
Yeah, great question. I love that. There are a couple of issues with MTA. The first one is that it's impossible to really get the entire customer journey, even with first party tracking. You're going to have fragmented if there's nothing identifying you on all devices that you use, I'm not able to know that all these individual journeys are actually the same person. So that's one of the main issues. The second one is that even if you could have a perfect journey with no missing pieces, any rule set that you apply to it is arbitrary. So whether I say last click, first click, decay over time, linear, but there's no scientific basis for any of that. It's just somebody choosing how to rate certain things. As opposed to media mix modeling, that essentially what it does is it looks at the causal effect of certain things. So if I have a shop and I have 100 customers a day and I hire somebody to stand outside and now I start getting 120 customers a day, that's 20 additional customers. Now, the promoter outside is going to say that 50 people saw the sign. And that's how platforms take credit for sales, is based on exposure to ads. But what I really care about as a marketer is how many additional customers did I get because of that.
That makes total sense. Is that why MMM seems to be, or tell me if this is a true statement, MMM is the more appropriate measurement tool for marketers when they're using different types of channels that are measurable in different ways. So for example, digital, right? Anything online versus say radio, television, print. Obviously those don't get you the data back as quickly as digital does. How do you think about those channels when you have online and offline and data coming in at different rates?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing about MMM is that you don't have to track individual users, and therefore you're essentially looking at, let's say that you decide to run ads and you see your sales increase, and then you stop running ads and your sales decrease. I don't have to know whether those sales came from you or somebody else. I just know that there's a causal effect right there. Now, that's why it works with things that are traditionally not trackable, such as audio, radio, TV, even like Amazon sales, which is a kind of a wall curtain, right? The con of MMM is that it doesn't provide that level of detail that you could expect with MTA. So I don't know that it's you, but also I don't know all the individual touch points from a single customer journey. So the correct way to do it is to use MMM to measure impact and then use a multiplier and apply that to that media. So if Google Performance Max, for example, is claiming a ROAS of 3, return on ad spend of 3, and when with media mix modeling, you actually realize that it's 6, then it's 2 times more. So you essentially multiply everything within that bucket by 2.
Got it. Got it. So walk us through how your platform uses MMM and incrementality to surface true channel performance.
Yeah. So there are 3 components in this unified framework. So we talked just now about how to triangulate MMM data with MTA. So we take that multiplier, we apply it to that, and then to the whole hierarchy underneath it. So we usually do tactics, then below that, campaign types. Below that, you have campaigns, ad groups, ad sets, ads, and so on. Then you have incrementality. So incrementality interacts with media mix modeling. So in 2 different ways. One is you use the hypothesis from your MMM to run experiments. So in our case, Performance Max had a ROAS of 6. That means that if we pause it, we were spending $10,000 in a given state, we pause it, that should bring down our sales by 60,000. Then let's say that it ended up being actually 55,000, right? So then we can take that and bring it into our MMM and calibrate it based on that. And we found that the companies only doing MMM as opposed to MTA, they get a 22% increase in return on ad spend. But the ones doing MMM plus incrementality, they do a 35% increase, so it's substantial.
Got it. So how do you solve for speed, right? You said you need a lot of data. It's faster, obviously, because it's digital, but obviously there's accessibility challenges and getting data quickly. How do you solve for that when you're building out the models?
Yeah, so what we do is we build a custom model for each client. Because let's say somebody selling furniture and there's a different business that is, the accountant doing their taxes. I mean, those are 2 very different business models. So I want to understand who your customers are, what the customer journey looks like, what your media mix is, retention rates, lifetime value, average order value. And based on all that, I'll be able to build a much better model than a generic one out of the box. So framework we suggest, and there are, this varies a little bit from case to case, but usually what we say is, as a rule of thumb, you want to do once a month, you want to look at your MMM, make optimization decisions. That's essentially saying, for example, bring down this campaign by 20%, increase this one by 10%, and so on. Halfway through the month, just check, make sure that you're actually getting the results the MMM suggested. And every 2 weeks, essentially look at the micro optimization. So with that data funneled to the campaign level, ads, creatives, audiences, all that, you are constantly optimizing within each of those buckets. And for incrementality, we normally say that at the very least, any media, any channel in this case that is spending at least 15% of your budget, you should be running 2 experiments per year. So if you have anything that is like 5%, don't worry about it. But if it's something substantial, make sure that you're running sometimes quarterly, but at least 2 a year.
Got it. And since you're building these models that are they're custom for each client, do you have to integrate with their tech stack? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, we have APIs that connect to everything that you use. Google, Meta, if you're on Shopify, all these data pipelines are automated and they're refreshed daily. And we just set it up once. And then the main thing we do after that is everything goes to a data warehouse where we label everything. So, maybe you have top of funnel campaigns and half of those are videos, half of those are product ads, or maybe half of the videos are influencer videos, the other half are brand videos. So we take the time to label everything, and that's kind of, we call it the not so secret sauce, because we talk about it openly, but that's really what makes the difference between a great model and one that is just okay.
So what does your typical customer look like when you think about, obviously like vertical, but also team size, or maybe it's based on budget, number of media channels? Like, how do you think about your ideal customer?
Yeah, we work primarily with direct-to-consumer brands that are spending K a month or more. Most of them are selling not only on their website, but also Amazon and sometimes other marketplaces. And they have a presence across multiple channels. So usually Google, Meta, TikTok, and so on. And they're advertising in the marketplaces too. So if you're running ads on Amazon, for example, we have some clients that are, between 100K and 250K in spend per month, but most of them are 250 or more.
Got it. So you're looking at $1 million to upwards to the sky's the limit. So you mentioned you have all these APIs for the different platforms, but what does that look like in terms of integration for or onboarding, I should say, in terms of how difficult, how time consuming is it to get the API set up, and then to sort of onboard a client so they understand how to use the tools and not just understand it, but actually put them into practice.
Yeah. So the getting access to the data is really easy. We ask them, what platforms they use. We create a document where they just click authorize. It's really easy. And then we start backfilling all their data, get as much historical data as we can. And in parallel to that, we have 2 meetings where we just ask them everything about their business. So it's a very consultative approach where I want to learn how you operate, your customer segments, and so on. Take all that in, build the model, and within 2 weeks, it's up and running. So it doesn't really take too long. Within 4 weeks to 6 weeks, you should start assuming that you're implementing the recommendations immediately. You should start seeing results within the first 6 weeks.
Got it. I'm curious, do people always take your advice the first time you give it to them? Like the first month in?
No, I would love that, but no. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think that there's a big part of what we do is educating people that have been used to something that apparently worked in the past with, a new paradigm, and helping them navigate that transition. And what we always say is that you don't have to trust anything we say, just do it, run an experiment, and let the data speak. That's why we're called data speaks. We believe that it's really important that you are in fact challenging certain ideas, and not taking anything as face value. And at the end of the day, formulate the hypothesis, put it to the test, and just look at the results.
Yeah, I agree with that, challenging the paradigm. I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen this transition to, from marketers that are marketers, right? They went to college for it. They've been doing it their whole career. A lot of it's through their gut and their experience. And now you have a lot of, like I said earlier, people from outside in the marketing world coming in, particularly analytics engineers, people that understand data, that are now running marketing teams, which I think is fantastic, but I got to imagine it's challenging when you have, like a CMO who's, a data geek, and then you have a marketing team who's, working off their gut. Those two must collide quite a bit. So I think you need to have alignment throughout the organization, but love your take on that.
Yeah. I think that the any conversation that involves me trying to convince you or you trying to convince me, I think that it's just opinion versus opinion, and we have the tools to actually run an experiment and learn from that. So at the end of the day, I think that fostering a culture where that's the norm is key.
Yeah, I love it. I've always told my kids, math is math. It doesn't lie. Like it's factual. So you can't
True.
debate. You can't debate the numbers, as long as you did the math right. So, how does a client measure success with you? Because if they're slow to adopt, right? Is it simply a matter of trusting you a little bit and a little bit more? Like, how do they know when you're successful? How do you know when
Yeah.
you're successful?
Well, we never want that to be something we had to convince them of. So what we do is we start talking to them about what success looks like to them. And it's always different. Sometimes people say, we've been putting more money into ads more and more, and we're just not seeing the results. We're actually seeing a revenue drop, even though we're spending more. Margins are not healthy anymore. You have people that say, we've been scaling up to a certain point, it was working, but now it's, the margins are getting thinner, so we can't continue doing what we're doing without falling into diminishing returns. Or they could say, we were asked to increase revenue by this much without increasing spend, or to decrease spend this much without affecting revenue. So whatever that is, we focus on that first. What we normally say is, if you think about your marketing budget as $100 that you are investing, 20 here, 10 here, 5 here, and so on, what we can normally do is take the same $100, reallocate it, and get 20 to 35 more percent more revenue from the same dollars. So that's usually the best first step, because there's some waste. Found that 36% of every dollar is going to waste due to bad data. So we found that that's the easiest way for them to see value quickly, for us to prove ourselves. And then from there is scaling and making sure that every dollar we put into the machine is always going to the place where it's going to have the best output possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's powerful, because I don't think brands can afford to waste 36% of their budget, especially because they're spending so much of their budget on we'll call it the internet tax, right? The digital, the platform fees and all of that. That's not even going toward media. You better be really efficient with what you have left. I'm curious to get your take on sort of AI, right? And when I think about the audience that has heard Mark Zuckerberg and Google in recent weeks telling their clients, "Hey, just give us your budget, give us your brand guidelines, give us your goals, and we'll develop the creative, we'll run the media, we'll optimize it. You just look at the bank for your returns. Basically, trust us." And I think if Mark Zuckerberg said trust us to anybody, nobody would. But yet they'll give their money to Meta without even thinking about it. What do you say to those people that are just trusting those platforms that are walled gardens, that are black boxes?
Yeah, so I'll say that two things. The first one is that you need to have an independent way of tracking results rather than having the platforms grade their own homework. They are in the business of selling you more ads, not in the business of giving you the most accurate data possible. Plus, they don't have access to everything else you're doing marketing wise, so they couldn't possibly know what percentage of your sales were driven by them. So that's really important when it comes to measuring results. The second one is algorithms are really powerful, but you need to make sure that they're getting the right data. So for example, if you use third-party pixels and 42% of your conversions are being blocked, algorithms are only getting half of the data they need to perform at their best. You really need to give them, with first-party tracking, all the data they need so they're targeting the right customers with the right ads. And one final thing is, in terms of what's right for you, I don't see it as a binary, but more as a continuum where I want to be involved. And in certain cases, I'm comfortable with a AI taking a bunch of assets from a pre-curated list of, like, my website, for example. Like, everything that is in my website, I already approved. But then I want to see what it came up with and why it worked. So I think we can really fight this. I think that in many ways is much more powerful than what an individual can do. But also you have to see, what you're comfortable with in terms of the brand message that you want to communicate.
Yeah, that makes sense. So can you share with us a success story where a marketer took your advice from the data, implemented it, and saw increase in return?
Yeah. So one case study. This is one of my favorite brands to work with. Their name is Incrediwear. It's like this wearable pain relief that is athletes like LeBron James, Messi, Ronaldo, Djokovic use. And I use it myself as a rugby player to get rid of pain. And I was with them pretty much from the beginning. They were this when I came on board, they were making 2 million a year, and then within 4 years, 22 million this year. They're on track to make over 30. And we did the two steps that I mentioned previously, where step number one was reallocating their existing budget. With that, they saw a 71% increase in ROAS, and then a 10x increase in revenue over the course of 4 years.
That's pretty cool. So tell us, Zeke, what makes Data Speaks remarkable?
Yeah. So when it comes to measurement, there you have two choices. One is to get a number of multiple vendors to fulfill the three pillars, or you can get Data Speaks. So we bring all these solutions for you under one roof, fully managed. So you don't have to worry about it. You can just make decisions and grow your business. So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, that's what's one of the frustrations that our clients were finding. You need measured for incrementality and recast for media mix modeling, and segment as a CDP, customer data platform, triple whale for analytics. And then, you're essentially managing multiple vendors, exporting from one place to put it in the other place. And you still have this issue of not having everything centralized. And one of the other thing that I think is really powerful is that in the past, so let's start with this. Custom models are always going to outperform generic models. But in the past, you had to make a choice where you would have data scientists build you a custom model and pay a lot of money for it, or have a software solution and get it for a very low cost. What AI has done is it has allowed us to essentially replace those data scientists with highly trained AI agents that ask you questions, learn everything about your business, train the model. You get the same accuracy as custom models because the costs are much lower, then we pass those savings to you so you can have the quality of a custom model for the price of a generic.
So what I heard was consolidation. So fewer vendors, you can do more. You can do the job of multiple vendors and custom models. I think the custom models piece is huge because I agree. You do a custom model, it's going to work better than a generic model.
Mhm.
Can't argue with that. Now, I know particular with MMM, but with all of the vendors you with all of the vendors that you mentioned, there's several new players that have popped up over the last few years, particularly in the MMM space, incrementality space. Who should buyers compare you to? And I know it's a hard question for a vendor to answer because nobody wants to talk about their competitors. But the reality is our audience is comparing vendors all the time. They're doing it amongst themselves, they're doing it on blurbs. But I know from having been on the sales side, oftentimes buyers are comparing vendors to the wrong competitive set, right? Because they might not know the space as well. So if you were a marketer, knowing what you know, who would you compare Data Speaks to when you're doing that evaluation?
Yeah, I'll say that I'm unlike a lot of people that you talk to in the sense that I'm an advocate for great measurement. And whether you're doing it with somebody else or Data Speaks, I just want you to be doing things the right way. So I'm an evangelist for this unified framework. So you can't go wrong with Recast. Recast is amazing. I love not only are they really sophisticated in terms of creating and validating models, but they're also very generous in terms of sharing their approach, which I think is a big deal. Measured is another one that does a really good job. Neither one of those will give you a first-party tracking or an analytics solution. You still need a triple whale. And yeah, and to stream conversions, track, with first party tracking, stream those conversions back to the platform. Segment is a really good choice. Elevar, it's another one that is a little bit smaller, but also really good. Yeah.
Got it. So you're comparing yourself to all of those combined.
Yeah. So you need segment. You need Recast or measured plus segment plus triple whale. I would say that's a really good stack.
Got it. And when you guys are selling into the market, are you selling against legacy tools or are you selling against or I shouldn't say selling against. Is a buyer coming to you because they're working with legacy tools and they're trying to upgrade, or are they working with maybe a more modern solution they're just not happy with? I'm curious to know what legacy tools you're replacing. Is it just Google Analytics? Like what is it that people are upgrading from?
Yeah. So most of the time, there are two cases actually. When people come to us because they realize on their own that what they have in place is crap, basically, they usually have the free suite, Google Analytics, the free Google Pixel, Metapixel, and so on. They are not getting the right results and they just need, to get serious about their measurement. Now, the other type of conversation we have is when we start the conversation with someone that is curious about attribution, maybe has heard about different ways of attribution, but we have to do a little bit of education about it. And that's usually a more difficult conversation. And the example that comes to mind to explain why was diagnosed with sleep apnea a couple of years ago, and I had an oral device put in. And I remember realizing that I had never known what it was like to be rested. Like I was never rested before. I was like, had all this energy. So it's one of the things that, if you've never tried the better way, you just don't know you have a problem. But then you start doing it the right way and you start getting results that you didn't know were possible.
I like that. I like that analogy. All right. We're going to move along to our lightning round. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. One marketing myth you'd love to bust forever.
Build it and they will come.
Okay. What tool or framework in your stack do you use every day?
We call it the casing framework, but it's essentially this cycle of using data to formulate a hypothesis, running a test, learning from the test, writing actually what you learned from the test, and then testing again.
A campaign decision you saw recently that made you think they definitely need MMM.
Yes. So I was working with someone that started using demand gen from Google and spending a lot of money on that. They were sure that was working, and I could tell just by looking at the data before we even run our model that wasn't the case. But the platform was claiming a ROAS of 5, where it was actually below 1. So I think people know intuitively that they're wrong, but sometimes they don't realize how off they could be.
Yeah, look, I think they make the decisions, right? So if they're wrong, how long have they been wrong for? And it's hard to fess up to that, right? Okay, so what do you do to decompress after a week of growth modeling and client calls?
I play with my kids. We go outside and just, kick a ball, jump on the trampoline, just something active.
What about rugby? You mentioned rugby earlier.
I retired last year at 41 because my body asked me to,
Yeah, I
but
bet.
yeah, I've been playing my whole life and yeah, I just couldn't do it anymore, but I wish I could.
Okay. Where can people learn more about Data Speaks or connect with you?
Dataspeaks.ai, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Got it. And anything new coming up, product enhancements, new partnerships, anything like that?
Yeah, we're working on a few partnerships. I'm also really excited about AI and what we're building. I mean, my big take on AI is that it's extremely powerful, but it's only as good as the data that fuels it. So reliable data make great AI agents. And I'm really excited to make it very easy for our customers to get answers to their questions.
Excellent. Hey, Zeke, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Thanks for coming into the Matrix and sharing all that you did about Data Speaks, and we wish you luck.
Thank you, Sean.
And a big shout out to our sponsor in Blurbs. Check them out at trustblurbs.com. Till next time, take care.
That's it for today's episode of the MarTech Matrix, a Blurbs production. To see what's coming up next, visit themartechmatrix.com. And if you're looking for your next MarTech solution, start your search at trustblurbs.com, where marketers discover vendors faster.